The path appears as you walk. You don't need to figure anything out tonight. There are nights when the answers don't come, not because you're doing something wrong, and not because you've missed your chance. They don't come because this is not a night for answers. You may be looking ahead and seeing nothing. No clear direction. No sign telling you where to go next. No reassurance that the path will make sense once you take it. And that uncertainty can feel heavy, especially when you've been taught that life should always come with a plan. But what if the path was never meant to be seen all at once? What if the way forward was not something to discover, but something to be made? There are seasons when the road does not appear before you, not because you are lost, but because the road forms only when you begin to walk. Even when nothing is visible ahead, each step creates the ground beneath it. Not afterward, not once everything makes sense, but now. Tonight you don't need to see the whole way. You don't need clarity before you rest. You don't need proof that tomorrow will be easier. You are not being asked to understand your future tonight. You are only being asked to remain present. There is a quiet strength in continuing without answers, a courage in resting when direction feels unclear, a trust that forms not through explanation but through movement, one step at a time even when the way is hidden. You don't need to map your life in this moment. You don't need to name what comes next. You don't need to resolve the uncertainty before you're allowed to breathe. Some paths reveal themselves only after you walk them. Some answers come only after you've moved forward without them. And there is a presence here that walks with you, even when you cannot see the road. Not rushing you, not pulling you ahead, simply staying with you as the ground forms beneath your steps. So tonight, let go of the need to know. Let go of the pressure to see ahead. Let go of the idea that certainty must come first. Rest here. The path does not need to appear tonight. It will meet you when you move. For now, stay. Let this play quietly and allow yourself to rest, knowing that even when nothing is visible, you are not standing still. You are becoming the way forward. And why the mind keeps working at night. There's something about night that changes the way the mind behaves. During the day, there's movement, noise, tasks to complete, voices to respond to, distractions that keep everything in motion. But when the night comes and the world quiets down, the mind doesn't always follow. It keeps working, not because you asked it to, but because it finally has space. This isn't a flaw. It isn't a lack of faith. And it doesn't mean you failed to let go. It simply means you've been carrying things that didn't have room to surface earlier. At night, the mind isn't trying to hurt you. It's trying to finish what was left unfinished. Thoughts return, not all at once, but gently at first. A moment from earlier in the day, a conversation that didn't sit right, a decision you weren't ready to make, a question that never found its answer. And slowly, without meaning to, your attention turns inward. You replay. You reconsider. You wonder if something should have gone differently. This happens to so many people at night, yet most assume it means something is wrong with them. But nothing is wrong. The mind is doing what it has learned to do. Stay alert, stay aware, stay prepared. For some, this habit was formed long ago. From having to be responsible too early, from learning to anticipate problems before they arrived, from being the one who held things together when others couldn't. That kind of awareness doesn't simply turn off when the lights go out. It stays awake. And when the night is quiet enough, it finally speaks. Not loudly, not urgently, just persistently. You might notice that your thoughts aren't always negative. They're often unresolved. They circle around timing, around meaning, around whether you're on the right path or falling behind. And because the night offers no immediate answers, the mind keeps searching. But tonight, you're not being asked to solve any of it. You're not required to process everything that appears. You're not expected to arrive at clarity before you rest. The presence surrounding you right now is not disturbed by your thoughts. Nothing about this stillness is fragile. You don't need to push your thoughts away, and you don't need to engage with them either. You can let them pass, like distant sounds outside your window, noticeable but not demanding your response. If your mind keeps moving tonight, it doesn't mean you've lost peace. It means peace doesn't need you to control your thoughts to exist. Peace is not the absence of mental activity. It's the absence of pressure to resolve everything immediately. There are thoughts that can wait until morning, questions that don't require an answer tonight, concerns that will be lighter after rest. You don't have to sort through them now. You can allow the mind to slow in its own time without forcing it, without judging it, without trying to manage it. There is a calm here that doesn't depend on silence inside your head. You're not alone in this moment, and you're not being measured by how quickly your thoughts settle. Just let yourself stay. Let the mind move without following it. Let the night hold what you don't need to carry right now. Nothing is slipping away because you chose rest. Nothing is falling apart because you paused. This night is not asking you to understand everything. It's simply offering you a place to stop trying. Stay here, and allow rest to continue, gently, at its own pace. The exhaustion of needing answers. And there's a quiet exhaustion that comes from always needing answers. Not the kind of tiredness that sleep fixes, but the kind that settles deep, in the chest, in the breath, in the way your thoughts feel heavier than they should. It comes from living as if every moment must be explained, as if every season must make sense, as if uncertainty is something to correct rather than something to walk through. Over time, this need for answers becomes automatic. You don't even notice it anymore. You wake up already asking what today should look like. You move through conversations measuring what they mean. You end the day replaying moments, trying to understand what they revealed about your future. And when clarity doesn't arrive, you assume you missed something. So you keep searching. Not because you enjoy thinking this way, but because somewhere along the line, you learned that understanding equals safety. If you know what's happening, you can prepare. If you can name what went wrong, you can prevent it next time. If you can see where this is heading, you can stay ahead of the pain. But that way of living slowly drains you, because life does not always cooperate with explanation. Some seasons refuse to be defined. Some paths don't come with context. Some transitions feel real long before they make sense. And when answers don't come, the mind doesn't rest. It tightens. You may recognize this feeling. Not panic exactly, more like pressure. The pressure to figure it out. The pressure to understand what God is doing. The pressure to interpret silence as a message. But silence is not always instruction. Sometimes it is simply space. Space where trust grows without information. Space where movement happens without certainty. Space where faith exists without explanation. The exhaustion you feel tonight may not be because you are weak, but because you have been carrying responsibility for things that were never meant to be fully understood by you. You were never meant to hold the entire picture. Yet the world often treats not knowing as failure. It rewards confidence. It praises clarity. It pushes people to speak in conclusions, even when they are still in process. So when you don't have answers, you may feel behind, as if everyone else has figured something out that you somehow missed. But many of the people you compare yourself to are simply better at hiding their uncertainty. They are walking forward the same way you are, one step at a time, without guarantees. The difference is not understanding, it's permission. Some people have learned how to move without answers. Others are still waiting for clarity before they allow themselves to rest. Tonight, you are being invited into that permission. You do not need to decode your life before you can sleep. You do not need to understand God's timing before you can breathe. You do not need to name the reason for every delay. Faith does not begin with explanation. It begins with trust and movement. Movement that says, I don't see the road, but I will keep walking. I don't understand this season, but I will stay open. I don't have answers tonight, and that is not a failure. There is relief in letting go of interpretation, relief in no longer asking, what does this mean? What should I learn? What am I supposed to figure out next? Some nights are not for learning. They are for laying down the weight of interpretation. You can allow questions to exist without responding to them. You can let uncertainty be present without resolving it. You can rest without knowing what tomorrow will bring. Nothing essential is lost when answers are delayed. What is meant to meet you will still be there when you arrive. Tonight, you don't need to hold the responsibility of understanding everything. You don't need to search for meaning in every quiet moment. You can let yourself be unfinished. There is a deeper wisdom at work than your ability to explain. A guidance that does not rely on your clarity. A care that moves even when you do not see it. So for now, release the need to know. Let this night be what it is. Not a puzzle, not a test, but a pause. Stay here. And let the pressure to find answers slowly loosen its grip. Ani-san, you are not behind, Vrayer. There is a quiet fear many people carry, and it often grows louder at night. Not the fear of failure, but the fear of being behind. Behind where you thought you would be by now. Behind the version of yourself you imagined years ago. Behind others who seem to have moved forward while you stayed in place. It doesn't always show up as panic. Sometimes it arrives as a subtle pressure. A sense that time is moving faster than you are. You might not even know exactly what you're behind on. Only that something feels late. Late answers, late clarity, late direction. And when that feeling settles in, rest becomes difficult. Because resting feels irresponsible when you believe you are already behind. But what if that assumption is not true? What if the sense of being behind comes not from reality, but from comparison? Comparison has a way of flattening time. It removes context. It ignores seasons. It measures progress without understanding the cost of the path. You only see outcomes. You don't see pauses. You don't see detours. You don't see the weight others carried quietly before things began to move. And so you measure yourself against fragments, against moments, against appearances. But your life is not behind schedule. It is unfolding at a pace that matches what you've had to hold, what you've had to survive, what you've had to become. There are seasons when progress looks like movement, and there are seasons when progress looks like endurance. Both count. Some of the most important growth happens in moments that don't look productive at all. Moments when nothing seems to change on the outside, but something inside you is being strengthened, softened, reshaped. If your life feels quiet right now, that does not mean it is stagnant. If things feel slower than you expected, that does not mean you missed your window. Not everything that matters moves quickly. Some things need time to take root. You were never meant to rush into the next chapter before you were ready to carry it. And readiness does not always announce itself with confidence. Sometimes it arrives as humility, as patience, as the ability to remain present without knowing what comes next. If you have been waiting for something to make sense before moving forward, that does not make you late. It means you are attentive. If you have been careful with your steps, that does not make you slow. It means you are intentional. The pressure you feel to catch up may not be coming from truth. It may be coming from a story you were told. that life has a timeline you must keep up with, that worth is measured by visible progress, that rest is only allowed once you arrive. But arrival is not the point. Becoming is. And becoming rarely happens on a schedule you can predict. You are not behind because you paused. You are not behind because you questioned. You are not behind because you rested when others rushed ahead. You are becoming someone who can walk forward with steadiness, not urgency. Someone who does not need to prove movement by exhausting themselves. Tonight, you don't need to catch up to anyone. You don't need to measure your life against someone else's pace. You don't need to rush clarity. The path you are on is forming beneath you, step by step, even if it doesn't look like progress yet. What is meant for you has not passed you by. It does not disappear because you move slowly. It does not vanish because you take time. Nothing that belongs to you requires panic to reach it. So if you feel behind tonight, let that feeling soften, not because everything is suddenly clear, but because you are exactly where you need to be to become who you are meant to be next. Stay here. You are not late. You are not missing your moment. You are not behind. You are still on the way. Nothing needs to be decided tonight. And there are nights when the weight you feel is not emotional, but decisional. A quiet pressure settles in, the sense that something must be chosen, answered, or resolved before you can truly rest. You may not know exactly what the decision is, only that it exists somewhere in the background. A conversation you need to have, a direction you need to take, a change you're unsure you're ready to make. And because the night is still, those unfinished decisions feel louder. They don't demand your attention aggressively. They wait, hovering, reminding you that something is unresolved. Many people assume this pressure means it's time to decide, that clarity must come now, that if you don't settle it tonight, you're avoiding something important. But not every decision belongs to the night. Some decisions require daylight, perspective, distance. Some choices feel urgent only because you're tired. When you are exhausted, everything feels heavier. Every option seems more permanent. Every outcome feels final. But tiredness distorts judgment. That is not failure. That is human limitation. Tonight, you are not required to make sense of long-term consequences. You are not required to choose the next chapter of your life. You are not required to finalize what still feels tender. Nothing meaningful is lost by waiting. Some of the best decisions you will ever make are the ones you did not force while you were exhausted. You are allowed to pause without falling behind. You are allowed to rest without settling every question. If a decision truly matters, it will still be there when you are rested. It will not disappear because you chose sleep over certainty. You do not need to pressure yourself into clarity. You do not need to manufacture confidence. Tonight is not a moment for final answers. It is a moment for gentleness. You can acknowledge the decisions ahead without carrying them through the night. You can set them down, not because they don't matter, but because you matter too. There is wisdom in knowing when not to decide, wisdom in waiting until your heart is steadier, your thoughts are slower, your body is not begging for rest. You are not postponing your life by choosing not to decide tonight. You are protecting it. Nothing important is being delayed by your stillness. Nothing is slipping away. Some clarity comes only after rest. Some direction appears only after you stop forcing it. So tonight, release the need to finalize anything. Let unfinished choices remain unfinished. Let tomorrow hold what it is meant to hold. You do not need to carry the weight of decision-making into this moment of rest. There is a care surrounding you that does not require your constant judgment. a guidance that continues even when you stop evaluating. You are not alone in this pause, and you are not irresponsible for choosing rest over resolution. Stay here. Let the pressure to decide loosen. Let your mind stop rehearsing outcomes. Let the night be free from conclusions. Nothing needs to be decided tonight. God works, even when you don't. There is a quiet fear many people never say out loud. The fear that if they stop, everything will stop with them. That if they rest, things will fall apart. That if they loosen their grip, something important will be lost. So they stay mentally engaged, spiritually alert, always listening for instruction, always watching for signs. Even in moments meant for rest, they remain responsible. But this is not how you were meant to live. There is a truth that brings relief when it finally settles in. God does not depend on your constant effort. You are not the one holding everything together. Even now, as you sit quietly, as your body rests, as your thoughts slow or wander, God is not paused. The Holy Spirit is not waiting for you to understand. He is not standing at a distance until you are ready. He is not requiring clarity before staying close. He is present, not as pressure, not as urgency, not as demand, but as companionship. There is a way God works that does not announce itself, a way He provides that does not require your awareness. You may have been taught that faith means constant attention, constant listening, constant readiness, constant effort to stay aligned. But faith is not sustained by exhaustion. There are moments when the most faithful thing you can do is rest and allow God to remain active without you. You do not need to manage His presence. You do not need to invite Him into this moment. He is already here. The Holy Spirit is gentle. He does not rush your process. He does not overwhelm your tiredness with instructions. He does not crowd your night with expectations. He stays, even when you are unsure, even when you feel unfinished, even when you have no words. You are not abandoned when you stop striving. You are not less spiritual when you rest. You are learning trust. Trust that God's work in your life does not depend on your constant attention. Trust that provision does not disappear when you loosen your grip. Trust that even when you cannot see the path, God is already moving ahead of you. There are things unfolding right now that do not require your participation. Connections forming, timelines aligning, growth happening beneath the surface. Not because you forced them, but because God is faithful. The Holy Spirit carries what you cannot carry tonight. He holds what you do not need to hold awake. You were never meant to watch over your life alone. So if you feel tired in a way that sleep alone hasn't fixed, it may be because you have been carrying responsibility that belongs to God. And tonight, you are allowed to set it down. You do not need to pray harder. You do not need to listen more carefully. You do not need to do anything to earn God's nearness. Rest is not distance from God. Rest is often where His presence becomes most clear. Stay here. Let yourself be still without guilt. Let yourself rest without explanation. God is not waiting for you to act. He is already working. A safe place to be still. There are very few places in life where nothing is required of you. Most spaces ask for something: your attention, your performance, your response, your opinion. Even spaces meant for rest often come with quiet expectations: to improve, to understand, to become better by the time you leave. But this is not one of those places. This is a place where you are allowed to arrive exactly as you are and remain that way. You do not need to explain why you're tired. You do not need to justify why you're still here. You do not need to show progress to be welcomed. Stillness is not judged here. If your thoughts wander, you are not corrected. If your attention drifts, you are not failing. If you fall asleep, nothing is missed. This is a place where presence is not measured by focus or effort. It is measured simply by being. Many people spend their lives without ever experiencing this kind of safety. They learn to stay guarded, to stay prepared, to stay aware of how they are being perceived. Even in private moments, they remain slightly tense, as if rest must always be temporary. But here you are not being watched. You are not being evaluated. You are not expected to leave different than you arrived. You are allowed to pause without purpose. If you return to this space again and again, it is not because you are stuck. It is because rest needs repetition before it feels natural. Safety is something the nervous system learns over time. And sometimes, the most spiritual thing you can do is return to a place that asks nothing of you until your body and soul finally believe it. You are not weak for needing this. You are not dependent. You are not avoiding growth. You are allowing yourself to be held instead of holding everything yourself. This space exists so you do not have to keep proving anything. Not to God, not to yourself, not to the future. You are already accepted here. If tonight feels heavy, you do not need to lighten it. If you feel empty, you do not need to fill it. If you feel uncertain, you do not need to resolve it. Stillness does not ask you to change. It simply gives you room to breathe. And over time, breathing becomes rest. Rest becomes trust. Trust becomes movement. Not forced, not rushed, but steady. You don't need to remember everything that was said here. You don't need to carry these words with you. You can let them exist in the background like a familiar room you return to without thinking. This is a place you can come back to on nights when nothing else feels steady. A place where you do not have to explain your silence. A place where you are not asked to arrive with answers. A place where stillness is enough. Stay here. There is nothing you need to do to belong in this moment. You already do. A word that can rest with you. There are moments when words do not need explanation. They do not need to be broken down, analyzed, or applied. They simply need space. This is one of those moments. Tonight, you don't need instruction. You don't need insight. You don't need something to remember or repeat. You only need something that can stay with you without asking anything in return. There are words in Scripture that were never meant to be rushed. Words that were spoken for the quiet hours. Words that do not push forward but settle gently. So let this one rest here. Not as something to study, not as something to understand, but as something to be near. In peace I will lie down and sleep, for you alone, Lord, make me dwell in safety. You don't need to hold on to that verse. You don't need to say it back. You don't need to do anything with it. Let it exist in the room with you. Let it breathe where you are. Peace is not being demanded of you. It is being offered. Safety is not something you must create. It is something you are being placed within. You are not asked to feel different immediately. You are not asked to believe more strongly. You are not asked to change your thoughts. The promise stands whether you are fully aware of it or not. You may notice that your body responds before your mind does. Your shoulders soften. Your breathing slows. The urgency you carried earlier no longer feels as sharp. That is not effort. That is presence. This is how Scripture works when it is allowed to remain gentle. It does not push. It does not argue. It does not require agreement. It stays. And staying is sometimes all that is needed. If your thoughts continue to move, let them. If sleep comes quickly, let it. If you remain awake for a while longer, that is fine too. Nothing about this moment needs to be forced. The word has already been spoken. It does not need to be repeated to be true. It does not fade because you rest. It does not weaken because you let go. You are safe enough to stop listening closely now. You are safe enough to let this play in the background. You are safe enough to rest without holding on to anything. Let this moment remain simple. There is no next step here, no instruction waiting, no action required, only rest, only presence, only quiet. Stay here. But why a space like this had to exist? Some nights don't need answers. They need a place where you are not asked to explain how you're feeling, a place where silence is not treated as a problem, a place where rest is allowed to come before understanding. Not every night is dramatic. Some are simply quiet and heavy in ways that are hard to name. You've done what you could do today. You showed up where you needed to. You carried what was yours to carry. And now, when the world slows down, there should be somewhere you can set that weight down without being told what to do next. This space exists because many people learned how to survive, but never learned where to rest. They learned how to keep going, how to stay strong, how to function even when they were empty. But they were never given a place where nothing was required of them. So this space is not here to teach you something. It is not here to correct you. It is not here to move you forward faster. It is here so you don't have to perform your faith, so you don't have to explain your silence, so you don't have to prove that you're okay. Here, you are allowed to arrive unfinished. You are allowed to not know what comes next. You are allowed to rest without resolving anything. Some nights, the most healing thing is simply knowing there is a place where you can stay without being rushed. A place that does not measure progress. A place that does not demand clarity. A place that does not ask for words. This space exists because not every journey needs to be navigated alone, especially the quiet parts, especially the nights when nothing is clear and everything feels paused. You don't need to make meaning out of this moment. You don't need to turn it into a lesson. You don't need to carry it forward. You can let it be what it is. A pause, a breath, a place to remain for a while. If you return here again someday, it won't mean you're stuck. It will mean you recognize that rest needs consistency before it feels safe. This is not a space for answers. It is a space for staying. And sometimes, staying is exactly what allows you to keep walking later. Closing rest loop. You don't need to hold on to anything now. You don't need to remember what was said earlier. You don't need to keep listening closely. You don't need to stay aware. This is the part where nothing new is added. Only space. If your body feels heavy, let it be heavy. If your eyes feel tired, let them close. There is no benefit in staying alert here. Nothing will be missed if you rest. You are allowed to drift. Breathing can slow now. Not intentionally. Not carefully. Just naturally. In and out. Nothing to adjust. Nothing to fix. If thoughts pass through, let them pass. You don't need to follow them. You don't need to respond. They can move on their own, like distant sounds, like clouds that don't require attention. This moment is not fragile. You don't need to protect it. You don't need to watch over yourself. Everything that needs care is already being cared for. You are safe to rest. There is no urgency here, no direction required, no expectation waiting, only stillness. If sleep comes quickly, let it. If it comes slowly, that is fine too. There is nowhere you need to be right now. Nothing you need to decide. Nothing you need to prepare for. You have done enough for today. Your mind does not need to work anymore. Your body does not need to stay ready. You can release your attention. If you notice yourself waking briefly, there is no need to re-engage. Just return to this sense of being held. The night will carry the time for you. You do not need to measure it. Breathing continues. Quiet continues. Everything important remains steady. You are not late. You are not falling behind. You are not missing anything. You are exactly where you need to be right now. Rest can be simple. Not earned, not explained, just allowed. If this continues playing, that's okay. If it fades into the background, that's okay. If you fall asleep and wake again later, that's okay too. Nothing about this moment demands control. Nothing about this rest requires effort. You are free to let go, free to stop listening, free to stop thinking, free to rest. There is nothing more to say, only quiet, only presence, only rest. Stay as long as you need. Everything else can wait.